right, you can be seated. Welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification Training course. Hope everyone's having a wonderful evening, had a wonderful week. We're going to be continuing on here. Make sure I got everything turned down and on silent. Continuing on in the advanced series where I believe Chris opened up and William continued the last couple of weeks, and we're really pretty much scratching the surface of getting into chapter chapter 1 here of this building moral excellence character unit. Building moral excellence, and like William covered before, this is the first of a series that we're working on the other series in this. But this one here you'll see is an advanced version of the character unit that was brought forth in the intermediate series, and it deals more with topics that people in their high school age years face. Now, like William said before, doesn't matter if you're 18 years old or you're 80 years old. Right? These are the things, the concepts, the ideas that are taught, that are presented and brought forth to help a person move from their teenage years to adult years, from childhood to adulthood. And as he brought out in the previous class, if a person hasn't gone through these concepts, if they haven't been taught these principles, if they don't know the foundation of what makes a positive character, right? What's the difference between personality and character, then they're going to be ill-equipped to face many of life's challenges, difficulties, that'll come their way. That, as we covered in the previous units, it's going to test their resolve. Well, first off, we've got to give them the foundation. Now, in this advanced series, depending on, what's requested and how it's presented, you might be, as a teacher, you might be continuing on from the intermediate series. Okay, in an ideal situation, in an ideal world, that's probably what you're going to do. You're going to get this from the elementary, the beginners learners, the beginning learners series, the elementary series, on through the intermediate series, and then into the advanced series, and take it right on into the workplace and parenting and so forth. And if the students have been paying attention, they won't have to go through the basic inmate workshop. But as the Peaceful Solution teaches, this is a program of both, or can be used in both a preventative and an intervention type scenario. So it doesn't matter where the state of a person is in their life, if they have ears and eyes and a mind to be able to comprehend, even if they're deaf, right? There's ways that it can be taught to them. Even if they're blind, there's ways that they have the hearing. There's ways that they can be taught these things, because one thing that's in common to people in all those different scenarios is that they have a heart and a mind to be able to have a character, first off, and make decisions that will determine what their character is, either positive or negative. And there's going to be consequences to the decisions that they make, right? Consequences or rewards. So, like we've always told people when they've asked, what is the perfect scenario where this Peaceful Solution Character Education program can be used? And our answer is always, where there's people, there's a need for the peaceful solution, right? Even if you think your society is a model society, right, we can guarantee you that there is something in the peaceful solution that can be brought into that society to take it even to a higher degree, all right? Because sadly, these things are not taught, for the most part, right? They're not taught, at least here in the United States. It's not really part of our educational system. Now, I don't know about other schools and cultures and so forth where they might incorporate certain things. I know when I was growing up in, I guess it would have been junior high and high school. We did have social studies class. Right? They called it social studies. Some type places they called it history and so forth. I remember in social studies we covered history lessons, but I kind of thought the concept of a social study class was to help you to understand society and how to function in society, and different societies and how they function and interact, and maybe it did tie into the history and how it shaped and formed histories and built nations and so forth. But but I never learned these concepts in those social security, those social studies classes that I attended when I was in school. This would have been very valuable. I know for a fact if I would have remembered, or if I would have been taught something like that, I would have remembered these things, because these are concepts that, even though for the most part our parents do their best jobs in teaching us and impressing certain of these concepts in our minds, it's not presented as clearly in all cases as it is in the peaceful solution. This is what this is. This is how you develop it. This is the outcome of this concept when you put it into practice in your life, or when you don't put it into practice in your life. And that's the well-rounded design of this program. It shows the student both sides of the coin. Unlike what you see in society, what you see on the movies, the television shows, the reality shows, you hear in music, they give you one side of the coin, right? They tell you all this fun that you can have if you can just do this, like William talked about last time, just going out and fulfilling your lust, fulfilling your every desire, not considering the consequences that come, not considering the consequences that come when you make impulsive choices, right? They don't show the broken up homes, the broken families, the sickness and the diseases, the STDs and so forth. I just saw on, it seems like it's almost something every few days, some reality TV star, recently died, either by taking their own life or something in some type of domestic violence, or they got into some type of accident because of careless driving or something like that. And sometimes it's just disease. It could be a cancer or something like that. But, this is the side of the reality of life that's not portrayed on the television, right? This is the true reality that, of course, it doesn't bring in the advertising bucks, right? It doesn't bring in the ratings and the views. But this is what people deal with on an everyday basis. They deal with depression, and depression is so big right now because of the onslaught, I guess I will call it, of digital devices being introduced into a generation where they're not mentally equipped to be able to, navigate through all these influences that are constantly bombarding them. Remember, the human mind doesn't reach a point of what neuroscientists and psychiatrists say maturity, right? I think we've all met people who are in their 40s and 50s that still act like they're in their high school age, and they're like they're still 15, 16, 17 years old. And we've also seen people who are maybe 15, 16, 17 years old who have the maturity of which you would expect coming from a 30 or 40 or 50-year-old. So that's not set in stone, but developmental-wise, the consensus is at about 25 years old, the mind is developed. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't learn anymore or that new concepts cannot be introduced to it, but there's a decrease in certain hormones and things that lead to impulsive decisions. Now, I would tend to think that certain behaviors and choices that are made in the youth can alter that maturing process where it's much delayed. And so people tend to stay in that impulsive style of living because of things that they do to abuse their bodies with alcohol, with drugs, with inappropriate relationships and so forth. And we talked about how the microorganisms get into the body and can affect the brain, sometimes foods that are eaten as well. So there are things that we can do to alter how our brains develop. But despite any of those things, if a person is willing and able to learn, this Peaceful Solution Character Education program can and will benefit them. So we're going to be picking up where William left off here. Again, we're in chapter 1, and he finished up on page 2 under the road less traveled. And if you remember, this is the same thing, kind of what we saw in the character unit of concerning the road less traveled, and he covered some of the same statistics that we saw in the character unit of the intermediate series, is what I was referring to. With the 125 STDs, the people contracting HIV, the drug abuse, the alcohol abuse by getting drunk. In the middle of that paragraph there on page 2, it says, life is about making choices. The choices you make, the ones that could save your life, will be based on the development of a positive character. And the only way to develop a positive character is to start paying attention to what's taking place on the inside. And that sometimes is a challenge, right? to try to do it ourselves sometimes. But imagine trying to get, a teenager who's, 14 years old, and they're being constantly bombarded by all these influences and this desire to fit in, right? This desire to have, or like was covered in the last class, this desire to keep up with the Joneses or the Gonzaleses or, whoever it might be, keep up with your neighbor. These are influences, right? And as a result, people don't pay attention to what's going on the inside. And they leave themselves open to being influenced to make risk-taking choices. And of course, this is what we're talking about here. It's important that a person understands that they do have a choice. They don't have to do what everybody else in society, what seems like everybody else, right? Because everybody else in society isn't doing it, but it might seem that way because their immediate circle, right? Their immediate group of peers, they may not even be friends, but group of peers in their school or in their neighborhood or sometimes even in their family, right? Because they're doing a certain something, they feel the need or a pressure on the inside to fit in, okay? Without thinking about the consequences, without thinking about, is this right or wrong? How is this going to affect me a month down the road, 6 months down the road, a year, or even 10 years? Because sometimes people make choices in their youth that can follow them for the rest of their lives, okay? And it was like one of the it was like a bust. I don't know if it was a bust so much as it was a situation where it was a 19-year-old female who was caught with THC product in a vape pen. She had some cartridges in a vape pen. She had only been at the school for like a month or so, a month and a half. Well, she had gotten caught with it. And, when the police officers came to the school, to deal with the situation, her being 19, right? When they approached her and asked her, why did she have these products? Why did she have illegal substances? Why did she have drugs on the school campus? Her answer was, everybody brings drugs on the school campus. Everybody's doing it, And the officers are like, yeah, but you're the one that got caught, right? You're the one that got caught. And because you're 19, you're going to be treated as an adult in this situation, which they did arrest her and they took her to jail. And in that situation, she went from pretty cocky and arrogant to I've never done this before, and I, this is not how I am and who I am and so forth, to, I shouldn't have made this choice. I shouldn't have made this choice. But at that point, it was too late. The police were going to arrest her, and they were going to, take her down to the jail cell where she would have to be bailed out and probably have a court date. And that is probably going to follow her as well, right? Because it is a big thing with bringing drugs onto a school campus, okay? Just kind of like when you break the speed limit, it's bad, but it's doubly bad when you break the speed limit in the school zone, right? And heavens forbid you break the speed limit while you're on your phone in the school zone. Some school zones, I know here in Texas and Abilene, you can be doing the speed limit, but if the police officer sees that you're on your phone, you can get a ticket, right? You can get a fine up to $200 or $300 depending on the area that you go through. So, there's some serious things to think about, but but like we said here, life is about making choices. The choices you make, the ones that could save your life, will be based on your development of a positive character. And the only way to develop a positive character is to start paying attention to what's taking place on the inside. Stop feeling like you have to join the sick, dying, or dead. And that's, not put in there, sarcastically or anything, but really based on what we've talked about in the previous 5 units and what we're going to be covering in this unit. Those are the consequences of engaging in risk-taking behaviors. And so, like we said here at the very bottom here, so really pay attention in this class. What you will learn in the next several weeks, you can use for the rest of your life. Like, William said, it's been it's been 50 years and I haven't used trigonometry, right? I guess I wasn't smart enough to go through the trigonometry class, I can do addition and subtraction till the sun goes down, but I never learned trigonometry. But up until this point in my life, I haven't run into a situation where I've needed trigonometry. I haven't run into a situation where I've needed calculus either. And very rarely have I run into a situation where I need algebra. Okay? But I guess if you were to go down the path of engineering or, mathematics or physics or something like that, then that would be more more predominant in your life. Just remember, your character is what makes you who you are. It will determine what you will stand for and what you will or will not yield to. All right? And yield is kind of when you yield to something, it's kind of like you're giving the right of way, right? Kind of like in traffic laws. When you come up to an intersection, if there's not a stop sign, there's usually an upside down triangle, which essentially, if you know your signs from driver's ed or whatever, that's a yield sign. And which means that the traffic that's coming across, or whatever direction it is, it has the right of way, whether it's traffic, vehicular traffic, whether it's train, whether it's or pedestrians, right? So when we think about this from the standpoint of influences, when we yield to certain negative influences, we're giving them the right of way. We're giving them strength or power or influence in our minds that if we yield to those things or give them precedence, like was said, these different influences that come in and out of our minds, we don't have to, we don't have to give in to them. We don't have to focus on them, right? We can't stop all the influences that are bombarding us when we're out in society. There's billboards all over the place. The car next to you is playing certain music. People are out in the street, dressing or doing a certain thing. There's colors all over the place. There's all types of things that are around us all the time. And our subconscious mind is constantly taking these things in. It's recording everything. But just because you hear or see or smell something, it doesn't mean that it's going to make you do anything. We still have control over the decisions, the choices that we make as an individual. The purpose of the peaceful solution is to help the student to understand that, yes, these influences are real. Now we need to recognize how they affect us. And hopefully, in the goal of developing a positive character, we're going to throw away the garbage, remember, eliminate the negative, and we're going to accentuate, build, focus on, retain, hold fast to that which is positive and essential, as we're going to see here, for the building of our positive character. Now, we're going to continue here. Let's look over to page 3. Now, this is something that's given here at the very beginning of this unit. And I think, I can't remember if William or Chris covered it, but it goes actually before we get into the procedure here. On page, lesson plan 1, page 1, if you notice under the materials, a part of it there under that note, it says, allow students to complete Chapter 1 student pre-assessment form found on page 3. And that's actually our slide number 2 there. And it says, this is found on page 3, prior to beginning the lesson. So this needs to be done prior to beginning the lessons. Now, everything that we covered so far is what we've covered. And if you'll turn to page 5, just to look at it real quick, that is everything that's prior to us getting into this lesson. So this student pre-assessment is the very last thing before we get into it. So let's look at page 3 real quick. And of course, this is something that you will give your students. You know, this is really easy to make copies. Now, you don't want to make copies out of the teacher's manual because everything's already checked off on there for them. This is where the student handbook will come into play. If they either have it or if you have one where you can make copies out of, you'll be giving them this same sheet, but it will be all blank here. And so it says here, select the choices below that most accurately answer the question. And then we have just 5 questions here, so nothing really, intensive. It says, put a C on the lines by the word that describes character, or a P on the lines by the words that describe personality. Now, again, whether you're transitioning from the intermediate series into this advanced, or whether this is the very first series that your students are being introduced to, this gives us an assessment of where they are at that time, because you might not know that. So we have friendly, shy, modest, optimistic, humble, outgoing, humorous, patient, and you can read along here because you can see the P's and the C's there right there in the lines accompanying these words. Impatient, relaxed, bold, honest, talented, aggressive, envious, respectful, responsible, compassionate, practical, affectionate, and indifferent. Now, remind your students when they're going through this that this is not a pass or fail test. It's just an assessment. So, tell them don't, just kind of wipe their hands on their pants if they're sweaty and everything, let their heartbeat calm down. It's, this is not a pop quiz at the very beginning of the lesson. This is just to give them an idea to gauge what they understand about the difference between personality and character, because until it's presented to them, until they're given the concepts and shown the principles that distinguish the difference between the two, then, in reality, they're more than likely not going to know everything about it. They might have some concepts down, but they're not going to have a solid foundation to be able to distinguish between the two. And so the accompanying P's and C's are right next to each one of those character or personality traits there. And then number 2, it says, if you had to choose a friend who is honest over one who is fun to be with, which would you choose? And of course, they would check either honest or the fun friend. And number 3 here, of course, honest being the correct one, which of the following definitions best defines responsibility? A, when you are determined not to give up or change what you have set out to accomplish. B, not yielding to impulsive thoughts and actions. Or C, always doing what is necessary to complete the task, right? Now, when you look at that looks like, man, those are all pretty decent ones there, I mean, it's all really positive, when you're determined not to give up or change what you've set out to accomplish, not yielding to impulsive thoughts and actions. Well, they all sound like, I'm going to select A, B, and C, right? But in all actuality, there's just one answer there. And it's always doing what is necessary to complete the task. The others describe different person or character traits. Okay, number 4. Most people's character consists of a combination of both positive and negative character traits. True or false? Of course, the answer there is true, right? Because everybody has a combination. Even if a person has been studying the peaceful solution for a period of time, it's going to take a little bit of time. Some things are easier to overcome and get rid of those bad habits or bad traits than others, okay? And as a teacher, we should understand that. And number 5, lastly, there it says, a person of integrity can best be described as someone who practices A, inherited positive traits such as intelligence and optimism. B, positive moral character in all his interactions. Or C, some positive and some negative character traits. After all, no one is perfect. Well, if you remember from what we covered there in the character unit regarding integrity, it's consistently, practicing these character traits is shown by your attitude and your actions. Right? That is what makes a person of integrity. So it'll always be shown and presented in all your interactions. So it's not going to change from one person to the next. You like this person a little bit more than the next person, well, you're not going to show them as much respect. No, you're going to show them respect as well, because that's who you are as a person. That's your character. All right, let's go back here to back it up here. I think it's page lesson plan 1, page J. Page J. And let's look at number 2 here. Procedure 2, excuse me. Tell students that in today's lesson, they will focus on how character and personality are developed in the fundamental differences between the two. Have the class turn to the sections entitled Introduction and What's the Difference on pages 5 through 11 in their handbooks. Call on students to read the text. Test class comprehension by asking students the following questions. And this is important from a teacher standpoint, because in testing their comprehension, not just if they can read, not just if they've listened to you, but are they, now remember, we're dealing with 13 to 17, 13 to 18, 14 to 18 year olds, 14 to 18-year-old students on average in high school. So their level of comprehension should be a little bit higher than what we covered in the intermediate series. But this gives you an opportunity as a teacher to gauge if your class is grasping the concepts, right? And if they're not, then you might have to take a step or two back and repeat it in order to drive it home. Sometimes you might have to change the wording. Sometimes once people see certain things, like some of the certain activities or certain scenarios or examples, then when the lesson is re-presented to them, it makes a little more sense to them because they've got some experience, so to speak, in that lesson. So here are some of the following questions here. A, what is the fundamental difference between character and personality? Now, this word fundamental, it basically is like a basic or base, foundational, forming a necessary base or core, central importance, right? So something that you can build upon. So what is the fundamental difference between character and personality? Because these are some of the questions you're going to ask after you get through this section, pages 5 through 11. And then some things might include personality is the means by which we distinguish between right and wrong. Personality is the combination of our personal and social skills, personal preferences and social skills. And then B, what is morality? And why does it play an important role in human interactions? Now, as we go through this as teachers, when we see these questions that we're going to be later on asking the students after we get to a certain point in the procedure, that gives us an indication that we really need to make sure we drive those points home, so that when we do ask the students the questions, they've comprehended that lesson enough to give you an answer that's satisfactory to the question being asked. And so this really plays a part on the teacher really paying attention to what is the purpose and the goal of the lesson. Because, we should be teachers who want our students to pass. Yes, everybody gets an A in my class, not because you're just grading on a really sharp curve or anything, but because your desire is to teach them well enough so that they'll understand the lessons and they'll desire to make these character traits a habit and put them into practice in their everyday life. Answers should include morals and our principles or beliefs that govern the way people think and behave. and they help us understand that whether people are members of the same family or from different nations, all human beings should be treated with respect, and no one should bring harm to them or destroy their possessions. And then tell students that the combination of personality and character makes each person unique. All right, and so that's the goal of what we're going to be accomplishing on pages 5 through 11 in chapter 1 here. So let's go over to page 5 and we'll get started. And if you look at the very top there, on page 5, it says, your character, make sure, yeah, okay. Your character and personality make you the unique individual that you are. And everybody has, bits and pieces. Sometimes we'll have similarities in personality traits, even character traits and so forth. But remember, initially, it's the personality traits that draw people together when it comes to friends. And so, and it's the combination of those personality traits coupled with the character traits that makes a person a unique individual. Like, Bobby over here, he's really outgoing and he's comical. And his old buddy, Eddie, he's comical and outgoing. But where Bobby here is an honest and responsible person, Eddie is dishonest, but he's also responsible, right? So Eddie, combination of character and personality traits makes him unique from Bobby, right? And even if they get online and have the same character traits and somewhat personality traits, there's still going to be things about them that are a little bit different. We don't want everybody to be like robots, right? We do like variety. Variety, as they say, is the spice of life. But ideally, the goal, the hope, the desire is that everybody develops and upholds these moral principles that bring about positive character. Because that, across the board, is what all society needs, all families need, every workplace, every school needs. So this is entitled Chapter 1, Character, My Foundation. And under the introduction here it says, how often can you recall using the following statements or similar ones to describe people you know or have recently met? Well, he's cool, but I wouldn't trust him. I've only seen her once, but she really seems nice. Simple statements like these describe a very complex combination of behavior known as character and personality. Together with physical features, character and personality help to make each person a unique individual. And like William covered in the previous lesson, society puts so much pressure on people trying to focus on changing the outside, right? How they appear to others. But they don't, society doesn't focus on changing the inside. Now, granted, in today's day and age, and I don't think it's just today, it's just a little more prevalent with, the availability through media and so forth. There's a lot of personal development websites and apps and programs that are out there, digital e-learning type programs. You can go to the bookstores nowadays, which, they still have bookstores. We've got a few in Abilene here. And there's a whole section dedicated to personal development, and in there you can find things about, time management and budgeting and motivation, overcoming anxiety, dealing with anger and stress and so forth, all types of things to help develop the inside. But very few books that I've seen over the years really focus on the core of a person's character, right? Because even with all those different things, those skill sets, you've got to work on developing your character. I'm not saying that they're completely lacking, right? But having a comprehensive course that helps a person recognize traits within themselves and eliminate those negative ones while focusing on building and strengthening the positive ones, that's really not on any number one top sellers New York Times bestseller book list there. So here it says, together with physical features, character and personality help to make each person a unique individual. In this first chapter of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, you will learn what character is and the importance of developing a positive character. Developing a positive character, which again, the goal is to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Now, as we go through this, we're going to talk about some of the negative character traits. Why? Because if you don't know about them, right, how are you going to recognize them in yourself? How are you going to recognize them in others? Because it is necessary that you recognize negative character traits in others, not for the purpose of judging somebody or saying that person's evil or a bad person, but for the purpose of recognizing certain things that you want to avoid and stay away from. And even as a friend, you might want to point it out to your friend. Hey, it's not right to steal, or you should be honest. It would look a lot better if you were a little more responsible and showed up on time, right? And a true friend would do that. A true friend would encourage you to build and maintain a positive character. But of course, in order to do that, you've got to have that knowledge in your mind first. You will see that character plays an important role in the life of the individual and society as a whole. You will explore how character and personality are developed, and notice here why it is essential that you learn to distinguish between the two. Now, on my slide number 3 there, we can see the definition. I think we covered this in the intermediate program as well. Essential is simply means absolutely necessary, right? Absolutely necessary. Something that is extremely important. It refers to something that is absolutely necessary, fundamental. Well, there's that fundamental again. Remember, that has to do with the basis or foundation or core of something. So that if we have a foundation, a strong foundation, we can build on top of it. And the structure on that foundation, or the resulting character, in this case, is going to be strong. It's fundamental or crucial. It describes things that are indispensable. In other words, you can't do without them. You can't dispose of this one little thing, this one aspect, and have a successful, well-rounded character. You can't throw it away. But things that are indispensable for a particular purpose or function. And of course, the purpose and function here is to build a positive character. Why? Because the ripple effect of that is going to be a positive contribution, even from that one person. You have no idea, right? They did a study once, and it was just, and I'll see if I can find it if I have time between now and next class. But how just us as individuals, how the things we say and we do and the knowledge that we have and when we put that knowledge into use, how those things branch out and affect people, far, far, far away, right? Like how you interacted with this person and how that made that person feel, and then how they did something to this person, or they did this in their meeting, and how it affected that, and how it did this, and how this, you'd be surprised how the things that we say and do, our attitudes and our actions, can ripple outward very quickly and affect society around us, and we have no idea that we've even played a part in it. That's why being a person of integrity, you're not only doing it just because you think somebody's watching you and you want to look great, right? Oh, this person's struggling. Let me go out there. Oh, wow, is that the news coming over here? Don't worry, I'll help you. No, you're not seeking glory. You're seeking to do the right thing. And doing the right thing doesn't have to have a camera in front of you to make it beneficial, right? The true test of self-control is what you do when no one's looking. And so, that should always be our goal, because the purpose is to be a benefit to society, not a hindrance. So let's see here. So it's essential. So keep that definition in mind. Essential that you learn to distinguish between the two, that is, character and personality. Although there is a clear distinction between character and personality, the two can be easily confused, and often personality is used to describe character. When people are unclear about the difference between character and personality, they can make assumptions about each other that are inaccurate. And I'm sure that we've all seen scenarios, we've probably all seen news reports or heard about situations where people, I was just thinking about, there was a guy in my old, where I grew up around in Cleveland, who he had kidnapped 3 girls, 2 women and one girl at the time, and he held them captive in his basement for years. I think it was like 6 or 7 years or something like that. And it was interesting because on the surface, this was a well-rounded family man. And all the neighbors, once all this came out, because one of the girls escaped, and then the authorities got involved and they found the other girls and so forth. But the neighbors were said, man, this guy, he was quiet. He never caused any trouble. We even had barbecues with this guy, and he came over and he ate with us, and we had a great old time. He just seemed like a really decent guy. Well, what were they looking at? What were they judging it? His personality, right? And they had no idea he had 3 women captive in his basement. And there's many other scenarios, where people are thieves. They do, they're great, hey, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, let me just come on over to your house. Can I use your bathroom real quick, And next thing you know, I've heard of the situations. It was big for a while there. Guys were going on these dates. They were meeting people online and going on these dates, and they go back. Sometimes they didn't even go back to their house or the other person's apartment or whatever. But the one thing that they all had in common was they woke up in the bathtub full of ice, and they had a kidney missing or something like that, right? And a cell phone was sitting there. Call 911. You had an organ, and there was a big organ trafficking thing that was taking place, and that was the thing. The person has drinks, they pass out, they surgically remove a kidney, because I guess a kidney or whatever goes for a lot of money on the black market, and they put the person on ice, right? Now that's something you can't get by. Now, what were they basing it on? They're basing it on the person's character, and they're probably thinking of other things, but I mean, personality, not character. They were basing it on the person's personality, and it got them in a lot of cold water in that situation. And so a lot of times people confuse those things, and there are consequences that come. Now, those are some extreme situations or circumstances, but the fact is these things take place on a daily basis. Think about our youth and them being ill-equipped to make, choices that can affect them for the rest of their lives. Some of the people have lost their lives. It was interesting because I think it was mentioned in this class too. It was a man who had did kind of a social experiment, and he walked up to some parents at a playground, and he got permission from the parents. He says, hey, do you think that your child would walk away with a stranger? And the parents were like, oh, no, we've trained our child. We brought him up and so forth. Now, remember, the parent was in the playground with the child. It wasn't like the child had walked, had permission to go from home to the playground by themselves. They were there with the child. And he says, well, would it be okay if we, see if they'll walk away with us? And in majority of the case, I don't remember how many they did, he came with a puppy and this and that. And, he talked some words that were interesting to a child. But in the majority of the case, the child gave him his hand and he walked away. He used very persuasive personality traits to draw the attention of the child. And they've done these social experiments online as well, because a lot of youths, teenagers, they get online and they start connecting with people who they think are someone who's a peer, but really it's a 40, 50-year-old man, with a fake profile picture. Well, I seen it on the internet. It's got to be true. Surely. No. And then they go and they kidnap him. It was a setup, but it was to impress into the child's mind, you can't just trust what you see on the internet or what you hear on these social media sites, right? It was kind of like a shock and awe thing. And the children, they were pretty darn scared, when that occurred. But what were they basing it on? They were basing it on the personality of the person. They were hoping to have a fun time. They were hoping to get out of the house and spread their wings and just live life to the fullest. I'm tired of all these rules that mom and dad has on me. But they don't realize that the rules are there to keep them safe. And that's what we teach all the way in the early learning, the beginner series, right? The rules are there to keep you safe. And generally speaking, in society, those rules are there for that very purpose, to keep people safe. But when they get away from those things and they sneak, right? You know, what's done in the dark, right? Nobody has to know. Well, all is fair in love and war. Well, it's not so funny when you think you're getting ready to be kidnapped. You know, and I warn children about this on a regular basis. Hey, you know, there's people out there who will make you think that they've got your best interest in heart, but they've really got their own interest in heart. And sometimes, you know, human trafficking is a real thing. You know, it's a real thing in our society, especially in Texas being so close to the border. You know, it's not that hard to get somebody out of the United States. But anyway, you know, these are things that are a reality that we have to make our students aware of, because, you know, we're not living 200 years ago, right? Things can be gotten, information can be transferred in the blink of an eye with just the press of a button. Send me your location, right? Next thing you know, Susie or Johnny, they're not in their bedroom in the morning. All right. Although there's a clear distinction between the two, it says people can make assumptions about each other that are inaccurate. Now, understanding the bottom paragraph there on page 5, understanding the importance of positive character, how to obtain it, and the difference between character and personality are steps towards achieving true success. Now, you got to read the rest of it, right? Because people, oh, true success, I'm going to take this character education class and I'm going to become a billionaire. Right? I'm going to become the best actor in Hollywood. No. True success in developing a positive moral character, because that's the goal, in developing a positive moral character. And this is what we measure true success as. We've gone into schools and we've been presented, posed to ask questions to the students, you know, how do you measure success? Do you feel you're successful? Do you feel that you're achieving success? Do you think, what is success to you? Right? Because first of all, you got to kind of get an idea of what is success to an individual. And you know, you get different variations of things, but for the most part, you know, in developing a positive moral character, no, they're not being successful in those things. Well, part of the problem with that is they got to be taught. They've got to be given the tools. In most schools, probably, I would say just maybe, I don't know, 99.9% of them, you know, aren't giving the students the tools they need to be successful. Well, this is where you come in as teachers of the peaceful solution. Let's look over to page 6. Page 6 here. So, what's the difference? And this triggered a thought in my mind. We did a presentation, I think it was in, I don't remember if it was in Laredo or Little Rock, Arkansas, but one of the title of the presentation was The Difference That Makes the Difference, right? And of course it was talking about character and personality. But at the very top there on page 6, it says, character is the combination of morals and beliefs. Morals. Now we talk a lot about morals, right? And we're going to get into a little bit more of it down here in understanding or the importance of morals to character. But I want you to have in your mind as well, let's see, which one is it? Slide number 4, what beliefs are, okay? Because we do talk about it, but I don't want to skip over it because beliefs are very important. In fact, beliefs are a state or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in some person or thing. In this case, this thing would be the character traits or the lessons or the concepts in character that develop a person's character traits. Something that is accepted, considered to be true, or held as an opinion. In other words, something believed, right? And all of these concepts that help to form these beliefs, they're all a part of a person's life from infancy on up to when you get them in class. And some of the things that they've seen and experienced help to solidify some of those beliefs. Like, for instance, as the example has been used, you've been taught by your parents, don't put your hand on the stove. Don't put your hand on the stove, it's hot. Now, sometimes people will believe without touching. But the person who goes and touches it, they really learned a lesson that's going to last a lifetime. You know, that experience coupled with what their parents taught them gave them two things. if they're paying attention. That yes, the stove really is hot and it hurts. And two, mom and dad warned me not to touch this, so I really need to listen and pay attention to the instructions that they give me, because they have my best interests at heart. Now, they're probably not going to think it in that manner, but at the very least, hopefully they will gain a certain degree of trust in the parent or the guardian or the teacher, right? And sometimes it's like this with young people. And I think all of us have had experience where we didn't grasp the concept of what our parents or teachers were teaching us years ago until later on in life. And then we really appreciated what our parents taught us or what we learned in school. And that solidified our belief in that concept or whatever that might have been. So these are important because they play a part, morals and beliefs that dictate. And then slide number 5 there. Now, dictate, you might be thinking of Hitler or Stalin or something like that. But a dictate, it can be a verb or a noun. But in the action is to give orders or tell someone exactly what they must do with total authority. Now, well, let me finish reading it here. It also means to influence something or make it necessary, an order that should be obeyed. Notice here, often one that you give to yourself. One that you give to yourself. So, where would that come from? Well, it would have to come from you learning certain rules or principles or morals that you've taken to your heart and mind, and then when you encounter a certain situation, you give that rule to yourself, or you remind yourself through self-talk and thinking things out and so forth, nope, not going to do that. Why? Because that will be immoral. That will break the rules and so forth. A guiding or governing principle, requirement, etc. All right, so that's what a dictate is, and this is what these things do, these morals, which are rules, and beliefs, how we see something, that dictate how we treat others, our environment, and ourselves. So we see there's a lot that goes into the development and the shaping of one's character. It is the basis, or like they say, many moving pieces and parts, right? The basis of which our every thought, action, and decision is derived, and it is the means by which we distinguish between right and wrong. Now, you would think that most people would be able to see easily and clearly the difference between something that's right and something that's wrong. But what if they grew up in an environment where they didn't believe that doing something, where they didn't believe stealing was wrong? What if they grew up in an environment where the parents, and sadly sometimes this is the case, because the parents weren't taught, or the parents were taught by their parents, that it's okay to steal from this company because they make billions of dollars a year. They're just going to write it off as a tax loss anyway. We're doing them a kindness. We're saving them on taxes by stealing from them, right? You could justify any crime, right? This person dropped $20. Well, I was $20 short, man, and I was just provided with that. They dropped that right, man. It must have been a gift from heaven. People can justify immorality in their minds. But if you have these principles in your heart and mind, you're going to dictate to yourself, no, that's wrong. Why is that wrong? Because it belongs to someone else. Whether it's the $20 that fell out of the pocket or whether it's the item that's in the store. The item that's in the store belongs to the store owner until you exchange cash for the item. Yeah, you have permission to buy it, but you've got to exchange the cash before it's yours. Okay? And those rules govern that. So these things are derived, and it's the means by which we distinguish between right and wrong. So personality now is the combination of your personal preferences. I don't particularly like eating my food cold, like supper time. Sadly, I do get home kind of late and I got to warm it up, and it's just not the same as when it comes fresh out of the oven, like a nice fresh out of the oven lasagna, and you pull that cheese is all melting, you got to pull it back 3 or 4 feet, then you got to bring out your scissors and cut it, right? Because it's so nice and juicy, and it's not the same as beep, 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 beep. sticking it in the microwave and heating it up. Everybody remembers TV dinners, right? I remember TV dinners. They were big they came out, I think, in the 50s and 60s, right? When TVs started to be big. They wanted to get people in front of the TVs while they're eating their food. No more family time. Let's sit in front of the TV and watch what's that guy's name? The Ed Sullivan Show. Well, that was before me, but I do remember the Ed Sullivan Show reruns and so forth. But but when you heat that stuff up in the microwave, it's not the same. I forgot where I was going with that. So I like my food nice and warm. I have friends that like their food like just below the boiling point. I mean, they like it hot. I mean, hot. That would normally give you a 3rd-degree burn. That's how they like it, Now, I'm not talking about spicy hot. I mean, temperature-wise hot. But that's a personality difference. It's same as somebody might like something that's super spicy. To other people, they're like, oh, man, this is spicy. What in the world did you put in this? Oh, just a little salt. Whoa, man, you need to cut back a little bit. That's some spicy salt, Some people, they just can't handle the spices, You can't handle the turmeric. Well, anyway, for instance, the type of music you like to listen to, whether you like art or football, as well as countless other qualities, make up your personality. Now, the process by which your character and personality is formed is similar in many ways. Some of these similarities include traits inherited from your parents. Traits inherited from your parents that you inherited from your parents, but also sometimes the things you see your parents do. Okay? And how you were raised. And notice here, this is also a part of it, experiences that have influenced you. And real quick, if we look at slide number 6, because this kind of reminds me of what we covered in the character unit, in the intermediate series in chapter 1 and page 4, we talk about character. Everyone has it, but where does it come from? And it says our character defines what is important to us, what we believe in, and how we treat others, just as clearly as our faces and voices define who we are physically. In fact, our character is an integral part of who we are. Whether the character we have is positive or negative depends upon many different factors. And this is the point I'm wanting to get to. Those factors include genetics, family values, influences, experiences, choices, and environment. Together, they help to, what does it say? They help to mold and shape our character. I forgot my spectacles. They help to mold and shape our character. All right, so tie that in, what we learned in the intermediate character unit 1 with what we are covering here in the advanced series in character, and the two go hand in hand, and it'll help us as teachers build a stronger foundation in order to relay this over to our students. So how you were raised, and what you inherited from your parents, how and where you were raised, and the experiences that have influenced you, okay? And so we're going to stop right there under what's the difference, and we'll pick up on page 6 with the importance of morals to character, because those are very essential too, as we covered on page 5. They're essential. They're a necessary part to the formation of our character, because if you don't understand the rules, you're not going to understand the application, and we'll cover that a little bit more later. Well, our next class is going to be this upcoming Wednesday, August 7th at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you for joining us. Everyone have a wonderful evening.